I'm so proud to be part of Karate for Change to address the social injustice in and out of karate. We wanted to create a space to amplify minority voices in the karate community. In the third episode, we decided to bring both the US perspective and international perspective together. From the US panel, we have myself, Cheryl Murphy, Brian Hobson, James Payne, and in the international panel, we have Natalie Williams, Alton Brown, as well as Gabriel Sela.
All right. Well, good afternoon to my US folks and Canadian folks, and good evening to those of you in England. I'm excited to partake in this conversation. We've had separate conversations in both groups, which were both very dynamic, and we've had really great feedback. But what I'm excited about is seeing what commonalities we have between the two worlds. This conversation around the Black karate experience is one that, as we mentioned last time, is the Black experience is not a monolith. You know, you have different experiences for all of us, but there also are a lot of commonalities. And so I'm going to jump right in. With our last conversation, we talked about the idea of representation quite a bit, the idea of, not always being able to show up as your full self, and how we need more representation of ourselves so that people can see the variety of what we are and feel more comfortable with who we are. And also for us to feel welcome in these spaces where we're often the only or of a small minority. And so in that panel, some of you actually mentioned how you were inspired by others who were on this panel. And I want to start out with the ladies. Ladies first, I'm all for chivalry. Cheryl, what did it mean for you when you first saw Natalie? And what does your relationship with her now mean to you?
So it was actually pretty amazing to see. I'm not sure if Natalie does remember how we met. It was after the 2002, I want to say, university championships, and I think we were at the after party, and she and I would just happen to just be around each other. And there was other people that were around too that were not Black, and they started asking us for pictures. And it was just kind of random. That particular tournament, I didn't really do so well. So I'm like, why is everybody, like in my head, I guess it was on my face. I was like, why is everybody like trying to take pictures of me? And then I think she read my face and was like, you do understand why everybody is trying to take pictures, right? And I go, okay, fair enough, right? So having, again, those type of non-verbal conversations of understanding, it did mean a lot. And so even to this day, when I needed to go talk to somebody and just get a outside person to speak about certain things that I was going through within myself, I went to her and asked her opinion as to how, what she thought, her experience, and trying to connect and how I can utilize it in my experience, which definitely brought some ease into my mind and what I can do moving forward. And then even when the Black Lives Matter issues came up, she reached out to me and just asked me how I was. And I was able to answer honestly. And we were able to, again, feed off of each other just to bring some perspective as to what was happening, which again, my angst in what was going on, just because there was somebody else to relate to. Especially because wasn't just in the U.S. Like there were other people of color that are Black that were also going through the same thing. So it just made everything a lot more relatable and alleviated a lot of things. So I'm so appreciative of the friendship.
Yeah, and Natalie, when you hear that, what does that make you feel? And did you have a similar response or connection with Cheryl that has been beneficial for you?
Oh, 100%. I think, I'm trying to think what the event was. I feel like it was Belgrade.
It was Belgrade.
Serbia.
Yep. It was.
So it would have been especially one of those countries that experience was common to me because I was from Europe and was seeing it all the time. So it was like oh, there's another black girl on the scene that I haven't seen before, because I think before at that time it was, I think, myself and probably Vanessa on the world circuit who were known. And then Cheryl came on board, and I was like, okay, I've got another sister. We connect and we understand each other. And so over the years, and also because we're quite close in age, so we've gone through so much over the years of what we've witnessed, very similar experiences for what we've had with regards to our teams, to regards to our career progression, both outside of karate and within karate. And so it's been nice to always have that shoulder, to always have that dialogue with and that conversation with someone who's, even though she's however many thousands of leagues across the water, still gets what I'm saying and where I'm coming from. So it's always been, for me, a really good touch point for when we've had conversations. I think the most recent one was in Morocco, maybe this year or last year. We ended up dragging in one of the guys from the Dutch team as well to ask his opinion on the issue. And it's nice to know that you've got that support, I think, for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because, you know, here you are, like you said, so many thousand miles away. You grew up maybe seemingly a different experience, you know, but there's something there that connects you.
Yeah.
Interesting in knowing, have others of you on the panel created relationships like that internationally with other Black athletes from other countries that have lasted, like Cheryl and Natalie's?
I step in there, like, quite interestingly, it's interesting that you mentioned Vanessa, because she's been someone actually kind of quietly behind the scenes that has always been somebody I felt like I could talk to for support, you know. Many a time on a training camp or a tournament, she's been somebody that I've spoken to, and, you know, she's not been afraid to say, you know, you need to do this, and this is what I feel you need to do, and has always been there with a positive vibe. In terms of supporting that journey, even up until last week, you know, discussing whether or not she can come to London to train and everything else. So yeah, she's definitely one, I would say, who's been a great support over the years.
Well, Alton, I'm actually going to kind of stay with you, and this is actually kind of, I'm speaking to you, Alton, but this is for James as well. James, you have an athlete in Alton who has competed on the highest levels for a long time, and not to make you sound old, Alton, but, you know, you've been doing it for a little.
A little bit left in me, a little bit left.
Yeah, you got a little bit in the tank. And
been watching them for a while.
Yeah, and Alton, you stated previously that you've continued competing for one reason. One of the reasons was to be an example for young Black athletes. You know, that you had thought about maybe leaving, and you knew that, hey, if I leave, there might not be somebody they can look to. And that makes me wonder, like, what advice you have for a young Black karateka like James, who often feels like maybe he's unseen or sometimes has lost motivation. What advice would you give him in his predicament?
You're right in what you say. For me, that representation is key and has been a massive part of my journey, to be honest. And, you know, a huge part of the reason why I'm with Jamaica now. I would say that there are a few key things in terms of advice for James. Number one, really, it's about remembering that your karate belongs to you. You've worked for it, you've earned it. Nobody has the right to tell you when it's time to retire, you know, when it's time to stop. You know, you've worked for that. And, you know, I used to say that karate has made me resilient in life, but actually I think my experience of being a Black athlete and having to deal with some of the things I've had to deal with coming up is what really has made me resilient, you know? So definitely owning your karate and keeping hold of that. Reaching out and building your network is another key thing. You know, for me, recognizing you're not alone in the struggle, you know, especially being on a panel like this, where we're all recognizing that there are so many athletes across the world who are in similar positions, so many Black athletes across the world in similar positions, you know, and there are people out there like myself, like Natalie, like Cheryl, who want to see you succeed. You know, I think it's all about tapping into that network and, you know, really spending some time and some energy in that, you know, feeding off their energy and their good vibes for you. You know, myself and Natalie trained together, and there's been many a night when I've driven her back to the train station after training and have said, Natalie, I'm not sure if I can do this anymore. You know, I'm struggling. It's been challenging. And she's given me a good word, you know, and said something along the lines of, Alton, last week I had a dream. This is a good one. I had a dream last week. Okay, what was the dream, Natalie? I dreamt that we just had to make it to the end of the year and everything would be okay. I was like, okay. That was just the little bit of advice I needed just to keep me hanging in there for that little bit longer, you know, so that's definitely something. And Wayne as well. We discussed Wayne on the last panel, but you know, it's incredible how the little kind of seeds that people plant in you years ago stay with you, you know, so really soaking up that energy. You know, you spoke about Sensei Brian on your talk, and I think just in terms of some of the positive messages that he's fed into you, you know, keep hold of those things. Wayne said to me many years ago, what I like about you, Alton, is that no matter how difficult things get, you always find a way. And literally from 2010, I still hold dear to that, you know, I still hold on to that. I'm the athlete that is always trying to find a way regardless of the situation, you know, and that's another thing. But also, lastly, reframing the journey. For me, I felt like my journey has had to become less about what I want to achieve for myself and actually what I could achieve for others through the journey that I'm on. You know, and that's been the thing that's really kept me going, that representation, that developing the next generation, you know, trying to be that representative for Jamaica who's doing well on the circuit so that there's a pathway for somebody else to come up behind me. You know, I think looking at your journey in the sense that you're contributing to something bigger than just yourself, you know, and I think keeping that in mind, those are the key things I would say to kind of seek out. Yeah.
No, I'm not tearing up. I promise. I'm good. James, what are your feelings from what you said?
Can I add a few things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. James, I don't know if you remember me. I think I met you at the US Open last year. And you've got mad skills. Really, seriously, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was hoping my athlete wouldn't go against you. You know, you have a lot of talent. You're still young, and we need you, man. We need you. So keep going. I remember my fighter won the -75 category, and we were about to go home, and you came and you told us you have to register for the Open to get some cash. You know, you didn't have to do that, man. Okay. So he's a very nice gentleman. He has skills. He has everything. A few years ago, I don't know if you guys remember, Charles Barkley said, I'm just an athlete. I'm not a role model. But I think he was wrong. You are a role model. You have to accept that responsibility and go on with your career. Go as far as you can, because you have everything you know, going for it. And well, basically, we still need you. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
James. You're getting a lot of love, man. How does this resonate with you in regards to what they're saying?
Well, first off, thank you guys. I can't thank you enough. And second off, David, I'm trying to get off this camera right now and go train. So no, I can't. Seriously, I appreciate the love, but you know, it's not just love, it's genuine from experience. And we're sitting with a lot of experience on this panel. I am the young guy, and so it's just a blessing and an honor to be able to take in a lot of the experience that's here. And I know that it's not just love, but it's, hey, we've been through this too, and you're next up, and we're willing to lead you through that. And that's one thing that reaching out to the network, as Alton said, is huge, because I looked at Cheryl as the superstar, and it wasn't until I reached out to her, not even just now, but even a few years back. I had just come back to the sport. I actually remember in Greenville, it was my first national competition I came back to in 2017 from a 10-year break from NKF. My last NKF competition, USA Karate competition, was 2007. So there's really no way that she knew who I was. She might have heard of me through Brian Hobson, but she was open arms immediately to the fact of, here's another young Black athlete in the sport who has talent, who I'm ready to help take to the next level. And but without reaching out, I would have never seen the fact that Cheryl would have been that quick to help, and so on as you reach out with your network through the international competition scale as well. So I thank you guys, and I plan on reaching out. You know, if I'm in Canada, I want to do some training. I'm coming to Jamaica too. So yes, definitely. Thank you.
Alton's going to try to get you on the Jamaican team. That's what's going to happen.
Come on now. Come on now. Let's talk business.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, what this shows for those who are watching is the importance of community, right? Like when we talk about representation, look at right here, right? Just what just happened now. And you have James, original karate instructor, on this panel. You have someone in Gabriel who recognized you from US Open. Now you have someone at Alton's level who, when you guys see each other, it's going to be a connection. You have Cheryl. So, I mean, right there, you have community, and that's what keeps us going. And if people can't recognize the value of that, then they're missing the mark. It's not about trying to say, you know, oh, we as Black Karateka are better. It's about, we just want to belong, just like everybody else. You know, they go and sit in the stands, and they have people to talk to and feel comfortable with. We want the same thing. So there's beauty in that. Now, to turn things up a little bit, or turn things to a different angle, to you international representatives, you know, we have England, we have Canada, you know, were there any stereotypes that you had heard or had about Black Americans or Black athletes, you know, maybe early on in your careers, you know, not necessarily that you believe, but there's things that you heard? I'd be interested in knowing. We talked about it in the U.S. Conversation about the different stereotypes that we've often faced. But were there any that you heard or that you grew up hearing about?
For me, as far as I'm concerned, you know, Canada is very close to the U.S. So the perception is that North America and karate is not you know, it's football, baseball, hockey. Those are the big sports in North America. So I think we're in the same bag, both of our countries. And I'm also coaching Senegal. So the perception was that the Americans, well, I don't know, it's not a very big karate country. Then I saw Cheryl on the circuit. I was like, wow, yes. And then there was Tom Scott and Elisa. Wow, amazing. So there is actually very good karate in America, but the perception is that it's not a karate country.
Well, more directly, and you know, Natalie and Alton, feel free to chime in. But as far as stereotypes about Black athletes, not even necessarily just karate, but like, what are some of those perceptions maybe abroad?
I think from the UK, with regards to the US, of how Black athletes across the board is that they're very loud, they're very show and very flamboyant, not necessarily humble. But just going on what Gabriel said, because of the type of sports that they're in, baseball, basketball, American football, but we have the same thing in the UK. So, you know, you guys call it soccer, we call it like football. It's the biggest sport that exists pretty much in Europe. And so the route for a lot of Black young men is to go into football. That's just what they do. That's the norm, if you're especially from one of those nations. However, I think in the UK in particular, it was a different dynamic, because I think in the 70s and the 80s, martial arts films were huge. And just for me growing up, every time there was a new martial arts movie, whether it was Van Damme, Jackie Chan, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dragon Ball Z, you name it, there's a new movie, The Matrix, there's an influx of kids across the board that start doing martial arts. So I don't think there's necessarily a specific perception for, I'd say, Black athletes. but I would say that they are few and far between in the martial arts world at a high level. And that's not necessarily the case of the perception with the other sports that you have in the US, where that demographic exists across the board there. And if anything, you over index on the amount of Black athletes you have in basketball and baseball.
Can I jump in as well?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you to give your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange that she says that. Well, it's not strange, but even when you look at movies, martial arts movies coming up through when I grew up back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and there was always, even when we were talking about being on these teams and we're the only one or whatnot, but even in the martial arts movies, when you were watching a Bruce Lee movie, it was quite a few white guys and Asian guys. There was only one Jim Kelly.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? When you watch,
yes, sir. That was my guy.
That was all our guys, right? Yeah. But even when you would look at The Last Dragon, who was the star of the show?
Yeah, Tommy.
One black guy that did martial arts, if I remember correctly. I don't think all the rest of his students were Asians, Hispanics, and white guys. So, it's just kind of weird that even the movies pump that. It's really not our thing, because Bruce Leroy was a nerd, right? So that was kind of the guy that didn't do the baseball, basketball, football, or soccer. He did the one martial arts. So it even plays out in the movies that motivates us.
Absolutely. Can you teach me some moves? It was
right.
I just watched Last Dragon the other night.
Real easy, Leroy.
Hey, David, can I chime in on that too?
Absolutely.
Yes, I just wanted to add, watching a lot of martial arts movies coming up, not just that there was only, one black guy in the movie, but it was almost like when there was an African-American or a black person in the movie, they had an attitude about them. You look at, Jim Kelly in Enter the Dragon, he's like, you straight up out of comic book,
Yeah.
And so that, he had this attitude where it's like, okay, well, then when you see black people in karate, it's almost like they got to have that attitude as well. And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it's how we're perceived in movies. Look at Shown Up,
Right.
Same thing is like, I've never met an African-American karateka that was like Shown Up, but that is, I'm sure some have.
Ryan said he
But for me though, looking at the black karateka that have competed, they're upstanding citizens, good people, but sometimes it's like in movies we get painted to be, these guys have attitudes or the egos, and so it's just interesting to Brian's point about that.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because there is an entire history and narrative out there that hasn't been seen. I mean, if you look at just the history of martial arts, you don't have to look very far to see the black imprint. Brian, you mentioned Thomas the Puppet. We can go on about guys like Ron Van Cleef, and there was a documentary I grew up watching called Fighting Black Kings that had Kyokushin karate guys, rest in peace William Oliver, and these guys who were phenomenal, but they just didn't get a lot of visibility. And that goes into my next question. When we look at today's athletes in WKF, there's success from all over the world. I think today the diversity of success is probably broader than it ever has been, but the athletes that really get projected as being like the faces of WKF, you have Agayev, you have Haruna, you have Sandra Sanchez. They're the more highlighted talents, and they're very talented. We can't take that away from them. But I was scrolling down the WKF Instagram page, and I did run into, they had a little store on Alton and on Babacar. But, when we look at the history, there's so many excellent black champions that people don't even know exist. I mean, we talk about Wayne Otto, of course, Jonathan Horn today from Germany. He's phenomenal, qualified for the Olympics. Jordan Thomas, WKF champion. Kenji Grilon, William Raleigh, I know he's wild, but hey, he's super talented. You look at Jeff Thompson from the past, and of course, Cheryl and Natalie and Alton. So why, and this is for anybody, why do you feel like these athletes haven't been given as much spotlight as some of the others?
Can I chime in? I think the reason is at the moment you are only as good as your last fight when it comes to PR and promotion. So at the time, media is very different now to how it was in the 80s and 90s. So I've been competing at WKF international level since 2000. And in 2000, no one ever checked the WKF website. No one was really engaged in that world. The fact that they didn't even have a ranking system that existed back then. So everything has been tailored towards the process for the Olympic route. So it's equally a subject of the circumstance that we're in at the moment, where at now media, especially social media and presence online, has become such a big fueling factor for WKF. And at the moment, due to the invention of YouTube, everybody's able to access everybody else's training. So like you said, at the moment, you've got representation that's above and beyond for everybody. It's very, very diverse when you see a lot of the rostrums right now. However, what I do still see is that a lot of the African nations are still not represented on that. So it's very heavily populated by Europeans, essentially the odd person from the Pan-American continent or Asia. Those are the two kind of the big continents that populate the podium. And that's something that we kind of touched upon before in the last conversation, that's a dialogue that needs to happen. And I think a systemic change that needs to come about so that there are more opportunities for African nations. Because even when you think about it, the Moroccan team, the Algerian team, especially the Egyptian team, at one point, I think Egypt dominated the under 21 categories. But the write-ups for them were not as vast as they are now if, for instance, Germany or France won. It's a very, very different perception. And so I think that now that the WKS is more involved in engaging with more athletes, I think when there's more success in those regions, you're going to start to see a bit more. But right now, it's a product of the problem I think that exists, that it's just not there yet.
I'd like to jump in. As a coach of an African country, we face a lot of financial and equipment difficulties. Getting to the competition, struggling for visas and everything is already a competition in itself, and we have to face the best in the world. So it's very, very, very difficult. And I don't know if you guys remember when they announced that the WKF now is asking a red uniform and a blue uniform for K1 events. We were like, oh my God, it's becoming a very, very expensive sport, and it's very frustrating for our countries. And we're not on the same level as everybody else. It's very difficult to travel from competition to competition. And we have somebody like Babacar, who's from Senegal, but who's representing Spain. And Cheryl, you were talking about him. He got a bronze medal at the World Championships. And when he got back home, he got a mural in his neighborhood. The mayor of his neighborhood, they did something for him. And a few months later, there was some tags like swastikas with the N-word and everything, and that is huge for me. And I think that the Spanish Federation addressed it, but I think the WKF should have came out and said something, take position to let everybody else know that this is unacceptable, even if it happened outside of karate. He's a WKF medalist. I think they should have took a stand, on that issue. So basically, it's very, very, very difficult for African nations. Senegal, as a coach, I have to take money out of my own pockets to travel, to help the team. And I almost, my wife almost divorced me, you know. Yes, sure, I'm not kidding, I'm not kidding. We make a lot of sacrifices because we want to, you know, we want to be on the table, on the podium, just like everybody else. But it's, so I think the WKF has some programs, you know, to help underdeveloped countries, but I think they should do more and take you know, a stand when something like what happened to Babacar happened.
Yeah, Alton, I saw that you also wanted to say something in regards to the representation on the WKF platform.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, like already, like in terms of the last two discussions we've had, we've already kind of identified that, you know, financially for Black karate athletes, you know, within the US context, within the UK context, it can be difficult to go from having many Black athletes doing well on the local circuit to then getting to the national level, you know, financially, and then to get to the international level. You know, it's a difficult journey, you know, financially. So if the prerequisite for having profile on, for example, the WKF website, on the website of the major brands, Arawaza, whoever, is medal success, already we know Black athletes have extra challenges in getting to that position. So I almost feel like, you know, WKF as a world body, national governing bodies, they all have a responsibility really to kind of, to take lead of that, you know, and actually look at the representation that they would ideally like to have and start to implement things to show that representation. Do you know what I mean? I think that is quite a key thing that I would personally like to see. I'd love to see NGBs held accountable for how they are promoting their Black athletes. You know, I'd love to see that trickle down to NGBs. I'd love that to be led by WKF. You know, you mentioned I had a story on WKF the other day, and it, you know, for me, it was great to be up there. To you know, it's not every day you see a Black face on the main page of WKF website, but I also had to do a lot of work behind the scenes as well to kind of, whether that was getting people to share the articles on social media, et cetera, to remind them how important it is to have that representation and that there is a market out there that wants to see that representation, you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I feel like a lot of work needs to be done from conversations like this, but in terms of that being led by World Federation, I think it's important. And don't get me wrong, I think COVID has changed things quite a bit. I think the WKF has had to look at how they get these stories out of the athletes during this period in which there hasn't been a lot of activity happening. So I think there is an opportunity right now to have those stories kind of, you know, come to light, to have that profile represented, you know? But I'd like to see more of it, for sure.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, if you don't mind, David.
Oh, go right ahead.
But I remember in 2016, actually, when Jordan Thomas won the world championship. Now, not only did Jordan Thomas win the world championship, he won it at a very young age and 8-0'd the competitor. And for those watching that may not know what 8-0 means, is he scored all the points and his competitor did not score any. And on a world championship scale in the finals, that's just incredible. That rarely happens. But even in a moment like that, I don't feel as if, you know, Jordan Thomas got the love that he deserved. And it's not just about Jordan Thomas. I think what Alton was touching on, and I 100% agree with, is that WKF as a whole could take more initiative in showing the diversity of the sport. I mean, that's what makes karate so beautiful, is that everyone does it. You can go to anywhere in the world and practice your karate. And so from a business standpoint for WKF, showing that diversity and even promoting the diversity is even a good business move, in the sense of the more people doing karate, the more opportunity WKF is going to have to grow and grow and grow. But not even just speaking about a business opportunity, but just for the sake of the fact that we need to have national governing bodies and WKF kind of holding countries responsible, national governing bodies being held responsible for the fact of, hey, there's a lot of talent, but certain people continue to just get the limelight. What's going on with that? Let's start a conversation. And it might be, as Alton said, we are in a great opportunity here where no one's competing. So there's not the excuse that, oh, well, so-and-so's winning right now. No one's competing. So this is an opportunity to highlight, man, you know, there's karate everywhere in the world, and as WKF, it gets brought together. And that's something that I'd like to see with, as we started this question, all the talent that we've seen from Black athletes. I mean, it's incredible when you go down the line of names. There's a lot to talk about. And this is a good moment where I believe that WKF and even national governing bodies can do a great job, or do a better job, in promoting a lot of the diversity and the Black talent that's been around for years.
Absolutely. Well, you know, that makes me think, and I'm going to direct this question first at Brian, and then I'd love Cheryl to jump in. You know, sometimes we, as any subgroup, I should say, sometimes has to make movements before the bigger collective wakes up, right? Like if we wait for WKF or our countries or whatever to step up and do the right thing, we may wait forever. But if you make enough positive noise and gain traction, yeah, you gain that traction. Yeah, good trouble. Rest in peace, John Lewis. But if you make that positive noise, then others will start to gravitate towards it. And that's what we're trying to do here with Karate for Change, right? And so it makes me wonder, and again, I'm directing this at you first, Brian, in what ways can Black Karate unite? And what impact could that have on the sport if we saw more unity? I'm not saying create a Black Karate Federation, you know, anything like that, but like in what ways could we possibly unite to support each other? And then what positive impacts could that make in return?
You know, to be honest with you, whenever we say, okay, or, you know, we say, okay, we're all going to get together and organize over here, not necessarily organize, just as a, you know, hey, Cheryl, I'll meet you after the Nationals today. And also, LJ happens to be at that restaurant, and then 2 or 3 other referees that happen to be Black and my friends. And we're all together in this restaurant sitting down. And next thing you know, National whoever comes in and looks and go, oh, what's that all about? We automatically like, wait a minute, what? And you can see it on their face. Like, you know, should I go over there to them? Should I not go over there to them? That type of thing. And, you know, but you don't see that same feeling when, you know, it's a group of white organizers or white, you know, over there, and they don't say anything. They say, oh yeah, how y'all doing? Da, 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 da. But we're not meeting to throw a coup or anything like that. We're just meeting because we just happen to be friends. But what can we do? I think main thing is we need to be able to look back. And what I mean by looking back, me being probably the oldest one, me and Coach Gabe being some of the oldest guys, we have to look back at people like James, and pull them up with us and say, hey, you know, this guy is going through on the same path that I'm going through. Let me help him a little bit and recognize that. And even to the point where I say, you know, if locally you can, you know, say, okay, I'm sure everybody here is either a member of a dojo or have a dojo themselves. They say, hey, you know, we're gonna get this club together, and it's not gonna be Black exclusive, of course, but we're just gonna have this club and try to nurture or grassroots that program into so that they can actually see that path and say, you know what, I want to take that path with you. Just show me what to do. And I think that's essentially what we need.
Yeah. Cheryl, what would you say to that?
I was thinking the same exact thing about pulling people up. I think that's really, really important. I feel that to kind of make another quote when you said good trouble, I was watching Bakari Sellers, I think his name is, and his dad on a podcast. And his dad, I think, was in the civil rights as well, like pretty deep. And he brought up something, it reminded me of a conversation that Martin Luther King had, what I want to say at the president at the time was Lyndon B. Johnson. And Lyndon B. Johnson actually told Martin Luther King, you need to make me or put me in a position where I can give you what you want. You have to put yourself in a position where there's nothing that can make me say here, right? So, and yes, there may have been all these other things, you know, racial issues and all that kind of stuff. But if you're put in a position where I cannot say no, then I'll be able to do it. So I just think that's the same thing. And I hope you don't mind me sharing this, James, where when you came to me with a concern and I said, just need to win. Just win, right? I had to take a step back because I was then reminded of what I had to go through to win. And I was like, I cannot impose that on anybody else unless they choose to do so. Because it was definitely not easy. However, if you win, that puts you in a position, a better position to ask, request, highly encourage, however you want to say it, for you to then say, this is what we need. The thing is, collectively, if we did this, then now we're talking, well, we feel as if we need to do yada, yada, yada. Or we feel that you need to implement whatever it is that there's some sort of plan, whether it's ethnic diversity committee. And I think, you know, David, you had discussed that with a couple other people. Like, I just feel we as a collective need to come together. And the only way we can do that is pull up. So, you know, my responsibility is to, and I do it at times where I'm looking for, you know, other Black athletes and having that conversation. I'm looking for little Black girls and having that conversation. You look fantastic today. You're gorgeous. Like anything to kind of just bring some light in for them to know that if anything happens, they have someone to look to. In the same way that I've looked, you know, I've had to search, right, a little bit more, whether that was to Natalie, was to Alton, I'm talked to, you know, Wayne as well. But it's just so that, you know, I am here. And I mentioned this before about me just, if I'm in an international tournament, I will stop because I see Black athletes competing, and we'll sit there and watch until it's done. Or if they're competing against each other, there's one person and they're like, you know, going up the ladder. I am proud when I do that. So, and then we'll have conversations after, you know, when you can, to say, I think you're fantastic and I love the way you fight. I keep going. So, you know, in that, it's just making sure that, one, you're able to pull people up, going out of your way to look for younger athletes that you can have that conversation with. And then to what Brian was saying, finding a collective in order to make sure we're able to do it together. That now we're in a position of authority to highly encourage what we would like to happen in our various situations, whether it's our NGB or whether that's the WNKF.
I'd like to jump in.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I think, you know, as a collective, if we want to get things moving forward, we need to include other Caucasians, and because if something, if an injustice happens to me, it has to concern you and you as a Caucasian, as an Asian, because it's we are all human beings. So we need to have each other's back. And if we are all, we have a collective of Black athletes, Black coaches, like Sensei Brian said, they're going to look at us like, but I was glad to see that Elisa is here and Sakura. We need to involve more people because this is a human problem, and we are asking for equal rights, equal treatment, equal opportunity, and if that doesn't happen, my white friend has to be concerned also, and speak also as as emotionally and as I'm doing it. Because if we keep the collective together, it's going to be just another black group, and that's my opinion. We have to include everybody because this concerns everybody.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in there?
Go right ahead.
I agree both of Gabriel, Cheryl, and Brian's propositions. I think there's a three-pronged approach to this. There's understanding the history and the success that exists within the sport for Black athletes, because there are many. There's like, especially from my perspective, specifically from Britain, and that isn't documented or shared. So I think that's the history we need to cover. I think there are programs and projects that need to be done that involve people within the Black community across the world, from Africa, from North America, Black Asians everywhere, to be a collective and get involved to put together programs that are specific to benefiting that group. And I feel that there's a level of education that needs to take place within our colleagues within the sport as well, as Gabriel suggested, before you can actually make change happen. So one thing that happened specifically, and this pertains to the English national team, was that after the Black Lives Matter movement kicked in, there was a lot of dialogue and conversation across the team between everybody. We had a few incidents, and it just prompted a lot of education. And what was enlightening for me was to find out that so many of my teammates who were oblivious to the issues that had been experienced by a number of the Black athletes that sat on the team were now enlightened, educated, and could empathize. They couldn't understand because they can't, but they can empathize and have an idea of what's going on. So therefore, they are now conscious, whereas before they were totally unconscious to it. And I think those are the three things that need to be addressed. And I don't know how we find a way to correct that, but it's the history, it's the galvanizing us as a group for what can be done for the Black community. And then there's the education across the world with everybody to make sure that we're all going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah. And
that's my 2 pence.
Oh, yeah, that's a good 2 pence. Did I say it right? 2 pence?
Yeah, 2 pence.
But it's powerful what you're saying, because when we look at like the movement right now that's happening across the world among sport, you know, the NBA is responding because the majority of their athletes are Black, and they're speaking up, and they know, hey, we don't want to lose their involvement. They are heavily engaged. And on top of that, you do have non-Black NBA players who are speaking up. But, you know, LeBron James starts speaking, everybody else kind of follows suit. And the same thing is happening in the NFL. There's enough noise to where they're like, hey, we don't want to lose this population. And I feel like there does have to be this continuous effort, like Brian mentioned and Cheryl mentioned, to pull up more behind us and not just think about our own individual journey, because, you know, if we don't continue to bring in representation, then our voices won't be loud enough. It just won't have enough weight behind it for them to hear it. If it's just you saying it, it's one thing. If there's 2 or 3 in the room or 15 in the room, you know, and then on top of that, like Cheryl mentioned, if you're winning on top of that, then it pushes the voice forward even more. Now, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'd like to pose a question. Kind of take your job over for a second, Dave.
See, man, can't trust brothers, man. They be taking
give a Black man a microphone. He might not get
a job, man.
I feel like my sensei is here. What's happening? Go ahead.
But I don't know if this is relevant today, because things I think are a lot more organized. But back when I was competing on the U.S. team, I experienced a lot of mediocrity as a white luxury. And what I mean by that was a lot of times, you know, of course, everybody knew that the #1 guy was going to the World Championships, #1 and #2 are going to Pan Americans, that type of thing. And then everybody else kind of fell behind them. But we would have other tournaments, international events, where, you know, they first would call the #1 guy, and if he couldn't financially make it, they would call the #2, and so on and so forth. And, you know, me being the #2 guy at that time, I would show up, you know, to the airport and to the next thing you know, I'm going, who is this guy? Who is he? You know, like I've never seen this guy before, and he's on the trip. And I'm going, have you been to a nationals or whatever? And he, they just kind of, or even at the team trials where here I am, I've been in this division for 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden this guy's at the team trials that you were supposed to be at the nationals to qualify for. And I'm going, who are these people? And it just wasn't 1 or 2, it was 4 or 5 or whatever the case may be. And comes to find out, of course, at that time, the president of the USA Karate Federation was from Ohio. Chances are they were from either Ohio or neighboring states that they kind of knew him. And I just kind of felt like, that was kind of weird and, favoritism and that type of thing. But he was just fielding teams with people that he knew or sensei students that he knew of. So I was just wondering, is that prevalent today in which you guys have seen or something like that?
Is this to USA or
anybody?
Well, it's pretty straightforward right now. So first goes to Worlds, first and second goes to Pan Ams. So, and then if somebody can't make it, then you call on the next person. I mean, I have heard stories relatively recent where kind of what you experienced was there, but for the most part, from my experience, it's pretty much, first Worlds, first and second. If somebody can't go, they call the next person. Now, maybe that person may have been the 5th in line if that was where, if that happened with you. But, and I know back in the day where they would call people last within a week. And that may have been what kind of deterred a lot of people who didn't have money to say, I'm not going. And it happened to my dojo. A couple of athletes, junior athletes in my dojo, they would call like within a week and say, okay, you need to have this amount of money by, Friday, and it's like Monday. And then you try, and then you may raise it, and then sometimes you wouldn't. So that would kind of affect that representation as well.
Well, James, go ahead.
I was just going to add in real quick. With USA Karate, it's very clear, first goes to world, as Cheryl was saying, but I've also competed in other organizations where they go by a pool team. And this pool team gets a little interesting because it's like, the top first, second, and the 2/3 are in the pool. And then you have the first, second, 2/3 from open weight division are in the pool too. And then you have another division. Now, these are all the same, maybe age categories or men's open, men's ippon, men's WKF, men's traditional Sanbon Kumite, right? And they create this pool. But then you see people from not within that pool getting invitations to go to the high level competitions like the world championships. And I'm not going to, necessarily throw any organizations under the bus by doing this, but at the same time, USA Karate does set a pretty good precedent for first place, you go to the world championships. Second place, you're able to go to PKF, where some of these other organizations that have these pools or, you got bronze in this division, you might have gotten bronze in kata, but now you're on the team and you can compete in kumite at a world level competition. You see that a lot. And so to what reason? I'm sure that whoever created that could create a good reason for why that's necessary. But then you do see a lot of, some African-American athletes who may not have done well in kata, but did well in a kumite division. They get left out. Yeah. And so it's, that's where that pool concept gets a little interesting. I think that might be what Hanshi Hobson's talking about.
Yeah. Well, to kind of pull that together with some common themes, and then we're going to move forward, is I think I hear a lot where we as athletes who have the opportunity to create community, we should be trying to eliminate barriers to potential talent coming up, right? And so if we know that there are young Black athletes or young athletes period in our dojos or in our areas who the only thing that may prevent them from going to the next level is financial, then we have to get ahead of that as a community and start working towards making sure that that barrier is eliminated. Because again, if we're talking about representation, you know, we don't want the financial barrier to be the thing that prevents them from going forward and putting their face out there and taking those steps. And so we have to continue to unite in those ways. And it doesn't have to necessarily be on a big promotion. It can be done in small ways to support our athletes. Now, as we close here, you know, I want to end with the question of what's next, right? Because oftentimes young athletes only see the sports side of a career, right? And I think that's sometimes what deters maybe Black athletes away from maybe getting into karate, right? It's like, well, I'm not going to get a college scholarship, or there's no professional league that I can make a bunch of money from for it. So what am I going to do with all this time? And so I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on what avenues can be taken to encourage people to stay in the art longer, beyond just their sport career. And then maybe,
Can I go?
yeah, and then I was going to ask also maybe talk about what you're doing or what your plans are.
I think one of the key things is to identify with that as a karateka, the sporting side is just one element. There's so many other pillars that exist within karate as a whole. And you actually never stop learning. And I think that's one of the really main things that needs to be emphasized, that your sporting career is for a fraction of your life. And there's so much more you can give and take from this activity, whether it be teaching, whether it be going back and to study different styles, whether it be going down a route of training in weapons, whether it's just to do it for pure fitness, whether it's to do it for the mental reason. There's so many different avenues you can take. And I think that's probably something that needs to be encouraged a little bit more, because it's great to be an athlete, but you can only be an athlete for so long, because at some point your body does deteriorate and you can't take or give out the punches anymore. So you have to think what it is you're going to do to contribute back to the sport. And I think that's a route for when people go through that level of retirement, that there's the avenue for them to do that, and a process and a way of understanding that can be done, because you have a skill set. One of my first coaches, Tiki Donovan, said to me that whenever you decide to stop, you have to decide what you're going to give back, because you've taken so much and it's your obligation to give back something. And I think it's to encourage that circle, because if you can keep that circle going, then it goes on to the next generation all the way through. And for me in particular, I'd like to go back and focus on learning different styles and seeing if I can actually gain my downgrade in some of the different styles that exist within karate, because I've just done sport karate for such a long time. And, you know, it might be good to go back and do some basic kata and kion training and actually develop my technique better as a karateka. Because if I'd want to go down a route of teaching, if I do perhaps want to use it as an option, I need to make sure that I can do and demonstrate what I'm talking about. Because it's all good doing spinning uramashes and back kicks that look fancy on tatami, and unless you can actually do it properly that you need to. So I think there's a lot that everybody can learn from it and take from it. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be encouraged. It's not necessarily about a financial reward. It's more self-preservation and what you can get out of it for your development as a human being.
I saw Brian pumping it up. It seemed like she resonated with you, man. Yeah.
Yes, you took a piece of me. Yeah, like you know, as you go up, you understand that, you know, as an athlete, you only have a certain amount of time, and if you are, you know, if that's everything, and I see these athletes, and sometimes I even have to pull some of my black belts in, or hey man, you know, you're a member of a dojo, right? So you got to, number one, give back. Number one, you got to become a teacher. Number two, you still got to stay on curriculum. Number three, you got to, you know, try to go up. That's why you're here in rank. And, you know, you see them kind of get, I'm not really concerned about rank. That's great. But one day you might have a dojo too. And somebody that you're teaching, they might want to have that rank. So you have to be able to offer it to them. So all of that she said, and especially doing kihon and good karate, that is everything. Because like I said, only a small amount of time, and you look, and there's nobody that could tell me that I wasn't going to be fighting the same way I was fighting at 25. Now that I'm 50, I'm 3 times slower. My knees hurt. All of that. I'll do kata today, man. Maybe get a bowl or some side. You want me to bend down? Nah. That's for the young cats. So yeah. So it's only for a short time. So God bless you guys. I wish I could do it too. But thank you, Natalie.
Alton, I know you've talked about some of your plans once you continue, when you finish competing. What are some of your goals as far as carrying on?
To be honest, I'm always torn, but one of the things that like I would really like to support with is coaching, coaching at an international level in some capacity. And there's a big part of me that would love to. I feel like I'm resourceful enough to go and find the information that I need in terms of how to get into coaching, whether it be national teams or whether that's in kind of international sport at a higher level in terms of organizationally. But I would love to see some kind of program in place, maybe led by the WKF, that was a route, if you like, for athletes who are coming to the end of their term as competitors and actually want to go into coaching at an international level. Demystifying that process. I often have conversations with coaches like Wayne Otto and Willie Thomas, and there's in their words, there's been a transition in terms of going from an athlete to becoming a coach at a regional level, at a national level, to then doing it internationally. I think demystifying that process. How do people apply for these national team coaching positions? Are there any potential internships where an athlete can go and spend some time in another country with a national coach, learning their craft? You know what I mean? I would love to see something along those lines. I reckon, master classes that show you the ropes. Yeah, that's a big thing for me. But coaching at an international level, really being involved for me personally in developing karate within Jamaica, sport karate within Jamaica and the Caribbean more widely, that's something that I would like to see.
Absolutely. Coach Gabe.
Yeah. You're more than welcome in Canada if you want an internship.
It's too cold. It's too cold.
Yeah.
See you next week.
But don't come during the winter. But I suggest also, if you want to go into elite level coaching, I suggest you go to school also. I went back to university at age 50, to do a master's in high performance. You gotta have also the science behind the sport, to know what you're talking about and advise athletes and so on. There's a lot of coaching programs that I can suggest to you. That when it's the right time, we can talk, and I have a few avenues that I can give you. And me personally, as a coach, I make sure that my athletes go to school. It's very difficult, but it's possible to compete at a high level and study at a high level. We have the example of Alexandra Rekia, who's from France, who's a friend of mine. She passed her bar exam in October. The next month, she went to Germany and got 2 gold medals at the World Championships. Yeah, so it's possible if you're organized and if you're determined, it is possible. So we have Oruna, who's a lawyer. We have many examples of athletes who prepare their after athlete career. So you have to be organized, motivated, and disciplined. But anything is possible.
Well, Cheryl, I want to, you were one of the originators of this whole Karate for Change movement. And I'd love to, before we close out, know what's your vision in regards to the kind of legacy you want to leave behind and moving forward, how you want to give back.
Honestly, my biggest thing with giving back is definitely to look back and pull up. Again, it just happened to be because it's most recent when James called me and expressed his concern, I was angry for him. And then I became hurt because I felt like I didn't do my job enough to where he was able to express to me how I felt a lot throughout my career. So I feel, though he did mention, you know, he felt like he'd come to me, so that kind of made, in a sense, made me do my job. However, I think more of an impact needs to happen, and I feel the only way to do that is to, not the only way, but one of the ways is to definitely look back and pull up. In the midst of this is where the Karate for Change kind of came up. Stockwater reached out to me and asked, you know, what she can do, because Black Lives Matter, you know, constantly in the news and all these things were happening. And Lisa reached out, and because I really felt lost in how I felt and what to do and how to do things. And that's how Karate for Change came to fruition. And so grateful to them for reaching out and us being able to build it. And then as soon as I came to you, it was like, okay, let's do it. And then to all of you as well, it was really like, we're trying to do this, what can we do? And it wasn't a question, it was when and what time. And that is what I'm trying to build, that community that you're talking about, where people feel that they have a voice, they have someone to go to. Now James has an entire people to look to and look for, and just to get some advice if something isn't happening, where it's not just one particular person. So just being able to bring a sense of community together. And again, not just a matter of it being all Black. We definitely need people as humans to help us in this process. However, we need to definitely make sure we're straight to then move out. So that's where I'm trying to go, making sure to pull behind me, and then opening up the conversation so that we have a place to go.
Well, I don't think there's not a better way to end. I want to thank all of you for speaking so clearly and confidently, and being vulnerable. And this is just the beginning of this movement. As Cheryl said, the goal is to continue having conversations, continue facilitating, and bringing in different voices. But I'm the first to say I think this was an awesome start, and I have a lot of gratitude to all of you, and to everybody who listens to this. Recognize that by no means do we stand here and say that we have all the answers, but what we do have is empathy and a desire to see change, and we want to see justice for everybody, not just for the Black Karate Cop, but for all. And when one subgroup does better, everybody else does better as well. It's a domino effect. So with that, I want to say thank you, and everybody have a good one.